Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. My name is Brian Dixon. I'm with Off the Chain Capital. I'm really grateful to be here with our esteemed panelists today. And before we jump in, I want to note something really quickly. So we're doing this panel today to showcase God Bless Bitcoin, which is a film that was released in July of this year. My partner and our chief investment officer and his wife, Brian and Kelly Estes, created this movie. They put tremendous investment of their time and resources into building out this film, and they gave it away to the world for free. It's a donation to the world, a donation to the community to educate them on the moral and ethical reasons as to why Bitcoin is important. And as of last week, the movie was actually released in Arabic. So if we've got it dubbed over in Arabic, it's 6 different languages. So anybody that's interested in watching it, please go to godblessbitcoin.com. And you can also download the God Bless Bitcoin app to learn about a lot more extended content. So with that, the first thing I want to do to jump into the panel is really talk through, like, what is the reason is to use Bitcoin? Why is it moral? Why is it an ethical monetary system, an ethical means of technology? Why don't we start with you, Jeff?
It's a truthful ledger. It's the first time in all of humanity that we've had a truthful ledger that can't be manipulated. That is a really big deal, because what it means is all of everything we've looked through, all the history books, everything is from an extractive system where somebody has to lose for us to win. And that gets worse and worse through time. It gets more and more extractive. And inside, when you're inside the extractive system, when you're one of the winners, if you were in England when the sun never sets on the British Empire, it would look like it was good. It would look like it was working for you. But it relied on extracting from other people around the world. And those break down, and we go to world wars to be able to reset them. And then we promise not to do them again. And we step right back in creating in an extractive system. And Bitcoin as an honest ledger, just as a truthful ledger, changes that game forever. We're moving to a cooperative system where the cooperation, everybody that's cooperating on Bitcoin, is making it better for everyone who's cooperating on Bitcoin. And so it changes everything we could ever imagine from that simple change.
Mm-hmm. Mark, how about yourself? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff nails it, so there's not a whole lot to add. But one thing that I learned and I kind of started to realize is that, most of us have kind of grown up thinking that money is a tool. And so tools, any tool that you can think of, could be used for good or bad. A screwdriver could help you fix a car, or you could hurt somebody with a screwdriver. So the neutral tool, it depends on how we use that tool. And so if money is a tool, then it's also neutral. But with fiat currency, that's actually not the case. You see, fiat money is inherently evil, because it's built on a system of theft, right? Inflation is theft. As they continue to print money, they're stealing from us. It's built on a system of lies, right? It's opaque. We don't know what they're doing. They're manipulating the currency. The Fed says they're bailing out after 2008 with $700 billion. We find out now it was $20 trillion. So it's a system built on theft. It's a system built on lies. And it's a system built on deceit. And so we find that fiat money is not neutral. It's not a neutral tool. And that means that anything that's being built on top of this fiat monetary system is then, unfortunately, inherently evil. Not to say we all are, but all of the system, all of the mechanics, all the incentives are now misaligned, and it causes all types of distortions. Now, Vladimir Lenin was quoted by Keynes saying that the best way to destroy capitalism is to debauch the currency. So using this inflation to destroy the currency. And he goes on to say that at the end, and the best way to get rich in this type of a system is gambling and theft. So we can see, he told us then that through this inflationary fiat system, it would lead to a system of gambling and theft. We can see that today. Everybody's gambling, not us here in the Bitcoin room, maybe everybody over in Dubai chasing meme pumps, but and theft, right? And so the system is built on theft. And so the way to change that is to have a system that's not built on lies, theft, and deceit. And so Bitcoin, as Jeff pointed out, is this open, transparent ledger. It's not lies, it's truth, it's code. It's not deceit, it's open and transparent. And so Bitcoin we can see as sort of the anti-fiat, the antithesis of that. And so that's why I think it's this moral case for money, and it really changes the incentive structure of the world.
Now, of course, I agree with Jeff and Mark. They nailed it, but here's my spin on it. I think 21 million, right? That's the number, right? We all know and understand there's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoins. And so what does that do when we have a banking system and a monetary system that's based on 21 million and no more than 21 million? I think it's a more honest system. It also means there's no creation of money ex nihilo, right? There's not just some special people in the system who can, through their actions, create more money that they get first. And that is the injustice of the fiat system, and that is where some of the unethical or the more short-term behaviors are being driven, because we aren't able to plan for the long term, because we don't have this sort of solid foundation of, okay, no more than 21 million. If you own one coin, you own at least 1/21 millionth of the future money supply. Now, this is a long-term process. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It may be multiple decades. But as the world transitions to this honest form of money, we will be better people for it.
Thank you very much. You know, one of the things it talks about in ancient religious texts and ancient spiritual texts is that people should come together, marry, become fruitful, and multiply. But today, with the governments around the world and the excessive money printing and the inflationary effects, more people than ever are still living with their parents at home. They can't do the things that these ancient spiritual texts outline that we should do in our society because the government continues to print and it decimates the wage earners over time. How can Bitcoin fix this? Stephan, let's start with you, please.
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. I was telling the guys before, I recently had a daughter, so, you know, we're doing our part as Bitcoiners. Let's keep the fertility rate up. But, you know, more seriously, I think the thing with Bitcoin is it gives you the ability to save, and it gives you the ability to plan for the future. And I think what many people face today is this just massive uncertainty about the future. And I think that, combined with all these other things, the high cost of living and so on, are what is causing people to feel like, oh, I'm not financially stable enough to have children, to do this, to actually get married and have children and do these things. So I think we have to understand the role that Bitcoin can play, and I think the way a Bitcoin-focused society or a society with Bitcoin as the money is going to change things. So, for example, maybe there won't be such a large role for the welfare state, and that will in turn, instead of things being done by the state, it may be a role for the family or for your community or a role in your religious communities as well. And so I see it's going to change the relationship there and bring it back to family and make it easier for family formation.
Yeah, to your point, be fruitful and multiply. It was one of the very first commandments we were given. God created man. Now go be fruitful and multiply. Now, I think this is a couple things. Obviously, one, it's the birth rate, as Stephan said. Good job doing your part. I'm trying to do my part. And we should all do that, because if we don't have kids and educate them, then, as Reagan said, that freedom is not more than one generation away from being lost. But back to being fruitful and multiply, I think, one, being fruitful with kids, certainly, but also with our own productivity. So our creativity, we should be creating, not consuming. We should be creating. We should be solving problems. We should be providing value to the world. But we know today the multiply part of kids is a big problem. Elon Musk is talking about this, that the demographic cliff that we're going off of is one of the greatest problems we have. I'll probably let Jeff go ahead and finish that piece. But, you know, when I think about, also in the Bible, it says that without vision, people perish. And so we need to have a vision of the future, and it needs to be an optimistic vision of the future. When we're pessimistic, when life is hard, when life, as Stephan said, is uncertain, then we don't plan, we don't save, and we don't have kids either. And so we need to have this optimistic vision of the future. We need to have that, and then we need to have hope. So a vision of what this future world could look like. We vision what a world on Bitcoin could look like. And then we need to have hope. Hope is the energy that helps us then build out and fulfill that vision. And so with a Bitcoin future, we have this vision of this fair world where there's a balanced world where we're all creating value for each other. We have hope that we can achieve it because we see it playing out in real time. And that gives us energy. And once we have that, then yes, we go have kids. We plan, we build for the future, and we reverse what fiat has done to this demographic cliff that we're on, and we can go multiply.
Yeah, you can see what Mark's describing in just about everybody who's made the transition themselves in their own mind to Bitcoin. And that transition isn't like one day I'm all in Bitcoin and one day. It's a transition because you're losing a grip on the world you used to believe in. And that grip you're losing is really hard because it's playing with your mind. And as you go deeper, you can see a totally different world than most people are trapped in today. Think about what housing is and why housing goes up so much, right? Inflation is wage deflation. It's the same thing. There is no such thing as natural inflation in a market. We've been conditioned to believe that it's normal, but it's the furthest thing from normal. And so when inflation is wage deflation, this essentially says, I'm going to pick some people's pockets with others, from others, and take their money and transfer it to others. What would housing look like as a store of value? Everybody would rush in to try to protect their savings in housing. And because they couldn't protect it in money. And as more and more people did it, housing would run up, and you don't need 2 houses, 3 houses, 8 houses, because your money was bad. And it would appear to you like housing was really great, while other people were losing further and further. So why is it completely natural that young people can't afford a house today? Because I'll use a real example. 37 years ago, something like this, I made $16 a year as a lifeguard. My daughter last year made $16 a year as a lifeguard. It's insane, right? What do house prices cost today versus 37 years ago? And you can see what this is doing. And you hold these assets, you hold stocks, because your money is losing value. And if your money loses value faster, is that a world you'd want to live in?
Yeah, that's super important. And as people continue to work, they feel like they're working harder and harder and harder, and they're just not making any progress. But we do have a new system now, and people need to really re-architect the reality of what's happening around the world to allow them to transition into this new system that can fix a lot of these problems. However, there are governments around the world that are now experimenting and implementing with a central bank digital currency, which is called a CBDC. Could you guys walk us through where you can compare and contrast what a CBDC is and how it is different from Bitcoin? Why don't we start with you, Mark, and then we'll do Stephan and then Jeff.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, if we sort of understand the fiat monetary system, and most of us here in this room do, I think the one thing that I'd just like to point out with the fiat monetary system is that there's just no way it can work. It doesn't work. And obviously we're seeing that. We're 53 years in at this point, and it's failed. It just can't. If you understand economics and monetary history, you understand it can't work. Money has to have a true cost of capital. If printing money made people wealthy, then we'd all be wealthy by now. So it doesn't work. And the reason why I wanted to start with that is because the CBDC system is still a fiat system. They're still printing money from scratch. Now, in that type of a system, it's now a digital currency instead of either a physical currency, although I think over 90% of transactions are digital today anyway. But so what it will do is allow them to, one, distribute that money faster, probably create more inflation. Number two, it'll allow them to redistribute it differently, giving money to certain groups or restricting certain groups from transacting. So one, it's not going to work. It's not going to solve any problem. It's not going to solve inflation. It's not going to solve the debt problem. It's only going to make those matters worse. But what it is, unfortunately, it's worse for us because it does give them ability to program the money. So now they can surveil the money. They can program the money. Certain interest groups, like I said, maybe, hey, let's give money to these people, but your money doesn't work after midnight because nothing good happens after midnight. At least that's what my parents used to tell me, right? Maybe you shouldn't eat red meat, so now you can't spend money on red meat. Or your carbon allotment has gone over, so now there's no gas for your car, and things like that. So unfortunately, it's really bad from a freedom perspective, but at the end of the day, it's going to fail. It doesn't solve the problems. And ultimately, if something like that happens, I think it only ushers in Bitcoin even faster. And the reason why is it'll sort of force people into this digital asset type of money. And then they'll go, wait a minute, why does the CBDC continue to buy me less goods and services, but this Bitcoin asset over here buys me more goods and services? And so it will probably progress and just lead people into Bitcoin more. So that's sort of my overall take on that.
Yeah, so I mean, probably not a lot to add to what Mark said. Ultimately, CBDCs will allow a greater level of surveillance and control for government. So it depends on your view, whether you like that or not. I think that will color your view of, what is the role of money, how should it be done. But bottom line, I anticipate Bitcoin is just going to continue appreciating in value. That's what we've seen. Now, yes, there'll be cycles, but I think it'll continue appreciating in value, and more people will just naturally gravitate towards using Bitcoin. And I think whether CBDCs are a thing or not, the cultural, social, economic changes that are brought about of moving to a Bitcoin standard are going to come to us anyway.
Yeah, and I have a similar take as Mark and Stephan, but I would just my importance of this: Bitcoin is not going up in value. Prices are following against Bitcoin, and that's a very important distinction. And because if you think it's going up in value, you're actually reinforcing the inflationary monetary system, and you're creating the outcomes faster with everything you do. Because you will not, we pretend we would vote for somebody who would allow the system to collapse. You won't. Because every asset in the world is made on top of insolvent debt. And if that debt went insolvent, you would vote for more printing. Everyone in this room. And so we pretend that we don't make it stronger through our actions, but we make it stronger through our actions. And Bitcoin is repricing all of that. It doesn't care. It's imposing a new discipline where the abundance gained from us creating things, creating new value in the world, is shared between all of us. And it's imposing that discipline. But it's very important from this control system, because the system we live in, if it's not a free market, if we've never lived in a global free market, then it's a control system. And that control system must take more of their individual rights and freedoms. It has to resort to coercion. It has to do all of these things. And I'm not saying it's because bad people. It must to keep the debt solvent. And we are all part of that system.
I would just add to that one thing is that, going into 2020 and 2021, the CBDCs were coming fast and furious. Almost every nation in the world is working on some sort of a central bank digital currency. But I think the tide has really shifted on that. So a couple points on this. Obviously, America is going seemingly in a different direction. Multiple states, half the states, have passed legislation that prevent any type of a CBDC of coming through. And of course, the U.S. matters because of the reserve currency of the world. But even Canada, which is almost a communist country at this point, has seemingly now the central bank said, hey, we're not, there's no demand for it, the people don't want it, and we're going to scrap it. Now, the EU is a different story. They seem to be still running into that. But I think there's a really big shift. And the big shift is, of course, Bitcoin gives us this exit ramp. And so we don't have to use a CBDC. As a matter of fact, I believe that governments don't tell us what money to use. I can use the dollar, I could trade Jeff my iPhone, or I could provide my labor to Stephan. And so we decide what money is, or more importantly, how we want to transact. And so we have this escape route with Bitcoin. And now, most importantly, what sort of the main narrative of this conference is sort of now this sovereign institution or sovereign adoption of Bitcoin. And so we have the U.S., again, the reserve currency of the world, leading the charge with moving into these reserves of Bitcoin. We have hopefully some announcements maybe coming of what's happening here in MENA as well. And so we have this exit ramp that's not seemingly going away. We have this escape route. I think CBDCs hopefully are on their way out. And I guess we could say thank God for Bitcoin.
Thank God for Bitcoin. That's right. Well, the governments were working really hard on this. Some governments still are. Another thing that governments have the ability to do is wage war. And if we look historically at areas around the world, let's use the United States as an example. When the United States dollar was backed by gold, if they ever wanted to wage war, they could only print the money that was backed by gold to go wage that war, or they would have to go to the citizens of the country to issue war bonds. And citizens would actually have to agree to do this by purchasing these war bonds to raise additional financing. Now that we're on the fiat standard, on a global scale, governments don't have to do this anymore. They can print money to infinity. They can then take that money to go and wage war. How can Bitcoin save lives by lowering the instances of war?
Yeah, so that's ultimately what it does over time, because it defunds that entire process. There's a massive opaque process that you can't measure in your head, the trillions of dollars. When you hear these numbers, if you looked at how much $1 trillion is, it's just such and then tens of trillions and hundreds of trillions of all this insolvent debt, and you just become numb to, oh, it's just another billion here, it's just another. Where do you think that money goes? It has to go into this machine, and it has to go into this machine on both sides. How do you get elected in that? You have to divide the other side from you. But it's still on an unstable foundation. So it really, all it says is, these people get more of the theft that comes from you instead of these people. And it still relies on theft. So as that breaks down further, as it constantly breaks down further, you have to create an enemy outside your borders to be able to stay in power. And then, like I said before, then we go through cataclysmic wars to reset currencies, to build institutions about how we're never going to do it again, and the whole process starts again. Because the control of money is if you can control money and more people are on your system controlling, you steal more money from them. It's a very, and we've never been able to leave that. We're leaving it, and Bitcoin defunds that.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
You know, to that question of how does Bitcoin save lives, and specifically with the framing of war, we can see that the fiat system leads to more war for sure. So the creation of the first central bank, the Bank of England, I think it was 1653, was created specifically so England could continue its fight against Germany at the time. And the bankers went to the king and said, hey, we have this deal for you. Check it out. We'll give you unlimited amounts of money for your war. But here's what we want in return. Let us create this Bank of England, where we can create our own money. You declare that our money is the legit money, and we'll just give you as much of it as you want. And so it was literally created for war. And to Jeff's point, it just continues to perpetuate as well as really make these wars bigger and last longer, which leads to obviously more death. However, I would say long before fiat currency, man goes to war. But here's where I think Bitcoin really changes that. You see, it changes the balance of power, and more importantly, it changes the incentive structure. So let's just use this hypothetical example. If we imagine some dictator, warlord, whatever, and he knows that he can go steal wealth whenever he wants from the people. So one, those people don't build value for the future. They don't save. They don't solve problems. So it holds them down. And the warlord provides no value because he goes and steals whenever he wants. But if you shift that balance of power to where now the king, the warlord, the dictator can't steal the wealth, two things happen. One, the people know, well, if they can't steal my wealth, I can build, I can save, I can provide value to the world. And more importantly, the government, the dictator, whatever you want to call it, now realizes, well, if I can't steal the wealth, if I can't confiscate or print the wealth, I guess I have to provide value to the people to get that. And so now we've taken a system that we're in today where neither party, the government nor the person, is really providing a lot of value because of this incentive system. But when you shift that balance, now both parties are providing value. And so even though war and death has been there long before the fiat monetary system, which of course does make it worse, I think by shifting that balance of power, we can really make a big impact on that.
Yeah, I think I would just add that we will move, hopefully, into an environment where it is just a lot easier to get what you want by trading for it and building things than going to war about it. And so I think that's one component of it. I would also say there is a general sense in which, if you look around the world, various governments, they have become almost detached from what the citizens want, right? So sometimes you get this dynamic where, you know, some politician in a faraway land, they want to send all the boys off to, you know, young children off to die in a war, but they won't send their own children to die in that war, right? They're sort of detached because in one sense, their governments have just become so large, so sclerotic, so bureaucratic that they are just divorced from the consequences of the policies and things that they advocate and do. And so they can sort of send someone else off to do their dirty work, not face any of the consequences because they're making somebody else pay for it, right? So I think that's kind of a very fiat money dynamic. And I think in the Bitcoin world, it's not that there will be zero war ever, but I think it'll be a reduced level of that because now you have an alternative. You can save with Bitcoin, you can trade for things you want instead of having to go to war for it.
Thank you. So the question that I would like to end on is, it seems like Bitcoin is this unique new opportunity that really crosses religions and connects people. How do you believe Bitcoin is this unifying technology that's really going to bring people together, similar to how the internet did years ago?
I might jump in here. I think there's a really good case for this concept of gratuitous goods. So Guido Hulsmann has written a book called Generosity, Abundance, and the State, and he speaks about how in a free market, people actually have opportunities to be more gratuitous. And actually there's a consequence of fiat money with leverage that causes people to want to just keep taking leverage and keep levering up. Whereas under an actual free market for money, that would be different, and there would be more charitable giving. There would be more some of these things that you do for people without necessarily wanting a monetary reward, right? That partaking in the community or your all these elements of it. I think it really would be a different social and cultural environment, and I believe that is the future that we're going to in a Bitcoin world.
Yeah, in regards to like bringing the world together, bringing people together, I think about, imagine if we didn't have one internet for the whole world, but every country had its own internet. So then everybody is sort of being fed a different type of information. We're all siloed off and we don't openly communicate. The internet has obviously changed that, and now information is flowing globally so you can understand that. But what we have with the monetary system is we do have these siloed systems. And so as I travel around the world, all of a sudden I have to exchange my money. I don't have the money. I don't understand the exchange rate. I'm importing stuff from different countries, but I can't quote my customers because the exchange rates are changing all of the time. And then it creates this competition where now countries are trying to manipulate the currencies against each other. And so it's really pitting the entire world against each other. And so just like having an open communication network like the internet has brought the world together, that final piece, and it's not about the internet now money, it's the final piece of bringing that together, where if we could have one global form of money, it takes us from the competition to more cooperation. It allows global trade and commerce to flourish, which will bring us all together, bring incentives together. And I think it's the final piece of the internet, and I think that's how it would probably bring the world back together.
Yeah, I think I want to just build on that. So when I think about the existing world, it is built on competition, but it's built on exploitation and competition. The free market is competition personified. It's a massive global competition with the output in service to you. We trade with other people to provide more value. And we will trade with somebody we don't like because we both win by that trade. That trade is a global phenomenon, and it's actually, and there is no such thing as a monopoly in that world. Because a monopoly creates more and more margin that punishes people, and it's attacked by all of the entrepreneurs, different ideas, because of the margin. So what that means in the world we're moving to with AI and advancements, and why this is so hard to see because we've never experienced it before, is a world where all of that productivity gains is flowing to all of society, and you're wealthier and wealthier and wealthier as a result. And we wouldn't let that happen from the existing system. It had to be imposed on us by a new system that allows that to happen. And that global free market, for the first time in history that we are all a part of, that's actually what you feel if you're deeper into Bitcoin and really understand it and start to and hang around with other people who really understand it. It's actually why it's almost like a frequency. You know when you meet a Bitcoiner who really understands it, that you don't have to pretend about all of this nonsense. You know right here how connected you are.
And one of my favorite things I think that Jeff notes in the film is, even if you hate Bitcoin, it doesn't care and it will benefit you, which is a really great thing to think about. So I really want to thank the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been wonderful. As a reminder for everybody, if you want to check out the film, you can go to godblessbitcoin.com and watch it. You can go to YouTube for free and watch it. Just type in God Bless Bitcoin, or download the God Bless Bitcoin app, and there's 25 hours of content in there. And like I noted at the beginning, the Arabic version was just released last week as well. So I wish all of you much love, success, and abundance. God bless you, God bless the panel, and God bless Bitcoin. Thank you so much.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.